So today in our series on the book of Proverbs, I am going to talk about the most intimate human relationships. Yeah, that means sex. In church, with both my daughter and my mother present. The struggle is real. Well, I might not be the only one experiencing a little tension about the idea of this subject today. You might feel awkward listening to a pastor talk about sex, or you might just be shaking your head thinking, what could this guy possibly know about my life, or in general, right? You might be thinking, here we go again, another outdated, irrelevant, religious, restrictive guilt trip. Or what can this guy possibly know about the pain that I carry? Or about my life? Or about being single? Or widowed? Or divorced? Others of us, we dread this subject today because we start from a place of shame, carrying shame that we've heaped upon ourselves for choices that we've made, for things that we've done. Today I want you to hear that there's hope. Because the book of Proverbs is the wisdom of God offered to us, specifically God offering to us the path of life. And that's why it's important that we started the way that we did today, focusing on God's love and His call to us of mercy and grace. No matter where you are today, no matter how you approach this subject, I want you to see today a little bit of God's message of life to you. Because that's what the book of Proverbs is. Kent kicked us off last week and he talked to us about how Proverbs really is the wisdom of God given to us in a collection or a series of these sayings that are true about the world. And that even when we don't see the particulars of them work out, they're still God's best way to pursue life. And so this is Proverbs chapter 3. Listen to these words, this call to the way of life today. Blessed are those who find wisdom. And wisdom is the term in the book of Proverbs, the calling to this life. Blessed are those who find wisdom, those who gain understanding, for she is more profitable than silver, yields better returns than gold. She's more precious than rubies. Listen to this. Nothing you can desire can compare with her. The way of God's wisdom is the most precious and valuable treasure that there is. And I started with this passage in Proverbs 3 because this sets us up for our conversation about intimate relationships, because it uses intimate language to talk about wisdom. Nothing you desire can compare with her, but it goes on. Look what it says. Long life is in her right hand. In her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are pleasant ways. All her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who take hold of her. Those who hold her fast will be blessed. And this is God's offer to all of us, a pleasant path, a valuable path, something better than anything on your own that you can desire. And again, it sets us up for this conversation about intimate relationships because it uses that language at the end where it says, take hold of her. It means take hold of her like you would take hold of your lover. Embrace wisdom. The wisdom that God offers is so profitable. And Proverbs constantly presents to us this life-giving path, this path of wisdom, in contrast to another path, usually called the path of folly, which is the path to death. And so we're going to hear that language today as we cover Proverbs, a representative sample of Proverbs that give overview of the whole book's teaching on intimate relationships. And it's going to be couched in this word. There's a way to life and there's a way to death. And it's going to compel us to choose one path or the other, wisdom or folly, life or death, because the writer of Proverbs knows the struggle is real. The struggle's real. Okay, one more thing before we get started. Kent explained last week how the book of Proverbs was written from the perspective mostly of a father to a son. It applies to daughters too, but it was just written that way. And so as we hear the words today, most of them are going to be in the terms of a father speaking to a son. It's the voice of one who cares deeply, who's passionate to help the one that he loves and cares for go on the right path and feel responsible for showing and teaching this good and right way. And I'm wondering this morning if you'd let me speak to you sort of like that, sort of like a father. You know, as your pastor, I care about you. I care about your life. I care about what happens to you. And so even as we enter into what might be awkward or difficult conversations, I'm wondering if you'd let me speak to you as a pastor who is desperately interested in you having the best life you possibly can, including the best intimate relationships possible. And what we're going to see today is that Proverbs addresses its instruction to three different groups of people, or three categories of people. But what I think you'll see is there's something in here for every single one of us. And the first group that the Proverbs speaks to is the unmarried, those who aren't married. And it comes in the perspective of a father preparing a son as he's heading out in life. The assumption in their culture was that they would be married, that everyone would be married, but it doesn't matter. The message to us is the same, whether you're married and hope not to be one day, or if you're married and content to be unmarried, if you're unmarried. It doesn't matter. The message is the same. Whether you're a son or a daughter, a man or a woman, the message is the same. And the essential message to the unmarried is this: avoid intimate or sexual relationships with people you're not married to. Look at Proverbs chapter 2. Wisdom, this way of wisdom, this woman wisdom, will save you also from the adulterous woman or man, either way, from the wayward woman with her seductive words, who has left the partner of her youth, ignored the covenant she made before God. There's two Hebrew words in here. We're going to see them over and over again in our teaching in Proverbs today. In the New International Version, that's the translation I've got up here on the screen, it talks about the adulterous woman and the wayward woman. Those are two different Hebrew words, and they essentially describe two kinds of people. One is the prostitute, and the other is a married woman who would entice this man to have a sexual relationship with her. Like I said, it goes both ways. It can be a man enticing and seducing a woman. It doesn't matter. But in the culture that Proverbs was written to, this idea of the adulterous woman and the wayward woman, it basically meant any woman that you're not married to. Okay? And it's set up in this language of look out. The struggle is real. Avoid this temptation. Do everything that you can. And so that's the words we see here. Proverbs 2 goes on. Surely it says, her house, the one who would entice you, leads down to death, and her paths to the spirits of the dead. None who go to her return or attain the paths of life. Remember, there's two paths, one to life and one to death. And he doesn't mean you're literally going to die, but there's a destruction. There's a decay. There's spiritual death that comes when you go down this path. And so it's a very strong warning to avoid any sexual relationship outside of a married relationship. All right, so if you're single and you're here today, you might be thinking, great, once again, The church is going to tell me I need to get married, right? And I'm sorry about that. It's true. In the ancient world, the world of Proverbs, they assumed everybody would get married, and the church sometimes is the same way. So listen, I apologize to you if you've ever in the church been treated like a second-class citizen because you're not married. I had a young man, a newly married man, tell me this week how disappointed he was that people's response to his wedding was, finally, like now you're a real person, right, in the church. We do that sometimes. I want you to hear, we don't have time to talk about this today, but the New Testament places an extremely high value on the single person. I just wanted to affirm that. The message of wisdom, the message of Scripture in the Proverbs today is the same whether you're unmarried but plan to be married one day, or whether you're unmarried and never plan to be. Avoid intimate relationships. Why? Because it's not the path to life. It's the path to death. Proverbs chapter 5 continues with this thought. My son, pay attention to my wisdom. Turn your ear to my words of insight, that you may maintain discretion and your lips may preserve knowledge. Those are good things. For the lips of the adulterous woman or man, they drip honey. Her speech or his speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. There it is again. Her steps lead straight to the grave. She gives no thought to the way of life. Her paths wander aimlessly, but she does not know it. There's this enticing, attractive, seemingly good relationship at the beginning, but this way of intimate sexual relationships with people that you're not married to, it ends in a path of death. Listen to the rest of chapter 5 here that talks about the loss, the things that you stand to lose when you go down this path. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Do not turn aside from what I say. Keep to a path far from her. Do not go near the door of her house, lest, listen to this, you lose your honor to others, your dignity to one who is cruel, lest strangers feast on your wealth and your toil enrich the house of another. And how many of us know this? And you've woken up one morning and you know you've lost your dignity. And there's death there. Interestingly, Proverbs especially highlights the pain and the danger of a relationship with someone who is married to someone else. There's enough destruction in having an intimate relationship with someone that you're not married to, but when that person is married to someone else, there's a new level of danger and pain. We see this in Proverbs chapter 6. For this command of wisdom is a lamp, this teaching is a light, and correction and instruction are the way to life, keeping you from your neighbor's wife or husband, from the smooth talk of a wayward woman. Do not lust in your heart after her beauty, or let her captivate you with her eyes. For a prostitute can be had for a loaf of bread. That's demeaning enough, but even worse, he says, another man's wife preys on your very life. Can a man scoop fire into his lap without his clothes being burned? Can a man walk on hot coals without his feet then being scorched? So is he or she who sleeps with another man's wife or husband. No one who touches her will go unpunished. For jealousy arouses a husband's fury. He will show no mercy when he takes revenge. He will not accept any compensation. He will refuse a bribe, however great it is. See, Proverbs is very practical. He says this stuff will kill you. You arouse the fury of someone else's spouse, and you might just find your life in danger. I read an account some time back of a woman who discovered that her husband was having an affair. And she discovered that they were having an affair. Their place of meeting where they would hook up was in their camper. You know, they had a pickup truck with a camper shell on it. You know, big camper shell, and the door, was in the back. You've seen those? And so when she discovered they were meeting in there, she did maybe what any wife would do. She got the keys, got in the cab, and she drove away with them in the back. She didn't just drive away, though, man. She punched it. And they're yelling and screaming in the back, and she's driving around town like this, and bam, bam, bam. And they're hollering and screaming, stop. And it goes on for more than an hour. She's driving around town like this. Stop, please, you got to stop. And so she pulls into a parking lot and backs up against a wall and walks away. That's what Proverbs is saying. More seriously, over the years in ministry, I've seen many couples, even couples in the church, decide to have an affair, and the pain and the death and the destruction that comes from that. That's why the writer of Proverbs says, don't go down that path. And you get involved with another woman, another man. There's death. And listen, I'm going to say this today. Porn counts. It has the same emptying, decaying effect as the illicit relationship with a person. And our social scientists are finally writing about this. Even people outside the church are writing about the deadly effects of involvement with porn. So it counts. But the path to life, the good life for the unmarried, is to avoid immoral relationships. That's the road to the best life, even the best intimate relationships. It avoids immoral ones when you're not married. And that does bring us, though, to the dilemma of the single person, right? Where do I turn for intimacy? And Proverbs is going to answer that for us in a moment, because the struggle is real. And the sheer amount of material in the book of Proverbs about this stuff proves that. But for now, I just want you to hear the passionate plea by the one who would have you live life is to avoid sexual immorality. The second audience that Proverbs talks to is the married person. Proverbs talks to the married person about sex. Chapter 5 in the book of Proverbs finishes this way. It encourages the married person this way, with some very poetic language. Verse 15. Drink water from your own cistern, running water from your own well. Should your springs overflow in the streets, your streams of water in the public squares, let them be yours alone, never to be shared with strangers. Now, if you knew Hebrew poetry, you know this is racy stuff. Okay? This is Hebrew poetic language that all refers directly to sexual activity. Okay? And so, when it talks about drinking water from your own cistern, this isn't about your water system. This is about your spouse. Okay? And the basic message is this: you shouldn't be giving your sexual life to strangers or to others. It shouldn't be out in public and on the streets and with others. It should be at home with your spouse. Let them be yours alone, never to be shared with strangers. Instead, verse 18, may your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. A loving doe, a graceful deer. May her breast satisfy you always. May you ever be intoxicated with her love. Why, my son, be intoxicated with another man's wife? Why embrace the bosom of a wayward woman? And again, this is the positive admonition to the married person. To be captivated, to be intoxicated with the love of your spouse. that the path to the good life is to be captivated by your own spouse, not by someone else's. And again, this word applies to women, of course, and just as much as it does to men. And this reflects the biblical view of sexuality, that it's good, it's proper, it's to be a prominent part of the married relationship. Do you know there's a whole book in the Old Testament about sex? It's called the Song of Solomon. And it's all about the intimate relationship between a man and a woman. Listen, you can't be captivated, you can't be intoxicated by your own spouse when you are sleeping with, when you are involved with, when you are emotionally attached to, when you are looking at someone else. And that includes porn. It compromises your ability to experience the very best in intimacy. The June 9th issue of Time magazine, they did a big article on marriage, specifically on staying married. And so they reflected the research of a lot of experts across our country in this field. And one of the things that they report is that what they know to be true, and it's been true for a long time, they've reported this, that married people constantly report higher levels of intimacy and satisfaction with intimacy than anyone else. And the longer they're married, the more the satisfaction raises. See, that's a reflection of the wisdom that God is offering to you and saying the path, the road to the very best in intimate relationships, sexual relationships, it's with your spouse. A captivation with your spouse, a single-minded, wholehearted commitment to one person. And listen, that's a hard ask, I know. It certainly is the opposite of what our culture would advise you and encourage you. And also in a practical sense, it is so easy to look elsewhere these days. You can go online and find all of your old flames. Make contact with them, right? You can be enticed and seduced constantly by images and by video. You know, there are these online experts. What they're really good at is helping you find your perfect match. It's easy for you to say, I'm dissatisfied with what I have. Maybe I should look elsewhere. The struggle's very real. Or maybe you've been married a long time. There's been a lot of water under the bridge. A lot's happened. The move towards captivation, the move back to captivation, it might begin with a move towards forgiveness. You might need a trusted pastor or counselor or friend to help you on that road. But make no mistake, it's the way to life. It's the path to life. Proverbs doesn't advise you to look elsewhere, to find something more suitable or better or more perfect. It advises you to rejoice and to focus on and to be captivated by your own spouse. Okay, so to the unmarried, avoid intimate relationships. To the married, enjoy intimate relationships with your spouse. There's a final word, and this is the word that's for all of us, every single one of us. And again, it's going to be in intimate or even sexual language. This is Proverbs chapter 4. Then he taught me, and then he said to me, take hold of my words with all your heart. Keep my commands. You will live. Get wisdom. Get understanding. Do not forget my words or turn away from them. Do not forsake wisdom. She will protect you. Love her. She will watch over you. Above all, the relationship that you want, this father says to his son, is with the woman wisdom. The relationship you really want is with God's wisdom. Pursue that. Love that. Cherish God's wisdom. Cherish this path to life. It won't let you down. The beginning of wisdom is this. Get wisdom. Don't you love that? Hey, here's the beginning of wisdom. Get some wisdom. Hear my words. I'm offering you this. Though it cost all that you have, get understanding. And I wanted us to see this verse because some of you are thinking, if I follow God's path, it is going to cost me. And I want you to hear the writer of Proverbs saying, yeah, but even if it costs you everything to walk God's path, it will be worth it. Remember, pleasant paths, more precious than anything you could desire. Cherish her, it says, she will exalt you. Embrace her, she will honor you. She will give you a garland, that's a wedding garland, a garland to grace your head, present you with a glorious crown. Again, this is intimate relationship language. Embrace wisdom, the writer says. Hear the voice of God calling, choose me, and you won't be disappointed. And so maybe you're here today and you're married and you're rejoicing, or you're married and you're struggling, or you're unmarried and you're content, or you're unmarried but planning not to be. Maybe you're post-marriage. Your spouse is gone and there won't be another. This word is for you. This word is for all of us. There's an intimacy that comes from God, that God offers, that's found in His wisdom, found in His ways, that will not let you down. It's not the same as the sexual intimacy you might find in a spouse, but it's real, and it satisfies. And in fact, it's the ultimate goal. Do you know that even our very best relationships, even our best intimate relationships, they're an echo, they're a whisper of the relationship God has designed us to have with Him. So get wisdom. Choose life. Walk His path. And maybe today, like so many of us, you say, I've stepped off the path. I want you to know something about the path. The path of life and the path of death are always right in front of you to choose. The fork in the road didn't happen so far back that you could never get to it today. You are one step away from life. Each of us is one turn, one move, one step towards God away from being on His path and finding His power, finding His grace, finding His strength to walk His ways. And I want to offer that to you today. So as we pray, would you just let me lead you through a time of prayer? Would you give your heart to God in this moment? Let's pray.